today we're going to talk about rotations. I'm taping you. And we're on the skill side. Okay? And here are the notes that I want at the top of your paper. Based on our discussion so far today, we know when there's a 90-degree rotation, that the X and the Y flip-flop. Because your lengths and your widths flip. And then you're going to have to check your signs based on the quadrant you're in. So we're going to take our skills that we know. We're writing these notes and not running our mouth. That if I'm going from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2, I know my X is negative in quadrant 2 and my Y is positive. So I just make sure that my numbers match up. The goal in 8th grade is always to keep getting efficient, and I will tell you that Mr. Proctor said this one's important, and I know this one's a little tricky. If you're doing a 180 degrees rotation, your X and the Y stay the same, which is awesome. But the signs are opposite of each other. Because if I'm going from quadrant 1 to quadrant 3, everything was positive, then everything's negative. I'm checking specifically for you to use prime notation, and anybody who doesn't put the little apostrophe on the letters gets a 0 on this assignment when it gets turned in, because it's really kind of important. Okay? Mrs. Smith, there's a triangle here. You did not talk about triangles. You just talked about individual points. How am I going to do a triangle if I only know how to do points? You do one point at a time. That's absolutely right. And so, we are going to super sucks. Do 3. We're going to do 3 together. We're going to skip 1 and 2 for right now because 1 and 2 is actually one step trickier than 3. And here's why. What we've talked about so far, yes, up there, is going about the origin, meaning that middle part. That's the only thing we've talked about so far. Okay? And so, if I have J, K, and L, we are going to rotate clockwise 90 degrees about the origin.
Oh, so tiny.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which way is clockwise? Which way is clockwise? To the right or to the left?
Right.
I'm going right. I'm going to zoom in, okay? So all of my points are in quadrant 3. What quadrant do they end up in? Quadrant 1. Everything has to be in quadrant 1 because it goes from this quadrant a quarter of a turn. I'm with you, Mrs. Smith. Let's start with point L. L is -2, 1. What's L prime going to be? L prime, remember I'm rotating 90, my X's and Y's switch. And then are my signs going to be positive or negatives or some kind of combination of both for this? If everything ends up in quadrant 1, is everything positives or negatives? Everything's positive. So if L is -2, 1, what's L prime going to be? It's going to be what? Okay, 1, 2. 1, 2. And then label it L prime, because a bunch of you are forgetting this apostrophe. It'll earn you 0 points. It also says give the coordinates. So I'm giving the coordinates here. Some of you missed points on last week's assignment because you forgot to do that. In 8th grade, there really are almost always right now 3 sets of directions. Make sure you follow all of them. K is -1, 3. What's K prime going to be? Mackenzie? 3, 1. Everything's positive because I'm going in quadrant 1. 3, 1. K prime. Yes, please do. I'm sorry. Because we wrote those notes on our papers. Yep. And we have to give the coordinates because it says, then give the coordinates of the vertices for J prime, K prime, and L prime. The directions say so. You're not required to write these coordinates, but since we use those to find it, let's do it. J is negative 4, 4. So J prime is going to be positive 4, because you aren't even really flipping them. What am I going to do now? I connect the dots in the same order. So every once in a while I'll get an 8th grade who does all the right math work and connects the dots in the wrong order. Like, it's like a star, Mrs. Smith. Well, now it's the same shape and the same size, but with rotations, it's pointing a different direction. So what we did with translations and reflections was exactly the same size and the same shape. One was a slide, one was a flip. A rotation is a turn. And so it has to still be the same length, same angles, all of it's exactly the same, except it'll be pointing a slightly different direction. I could do that, Mrs. Smith. I want you to do 4 on your own. Do 4 on your own, and then I want to go back up and talk about 1 and 2. What's your question? Got it? Do 4 on your own. Go. Do 4 on your own. Notice it says we're rotating 180 degrees. And you have to give the coordinate. Don't forget prime notation.